Being nice is no answer. Many people recognize the high costs of hard positional bargaining, particularly on the parties and their relationship. They hope to avoid them by following a more gentle style of negotiation. Instead of seeing the other side as adversaries, they prefer to see them as friends. Rather than emphasizing a goal of victory, they emphasize the necessity of reaching agreement. In a soft negotiating game, the standard moves are to make offers and concessions, to trust the other side, to be friendly, and to yield as necessary to avoid confrontation. The following table illustrates two styles of positional bargaining, soft and hard. Most people see their choice of negotiating strategies as between these two styles. Looking at the table, as presenting a choice, should you be a soft or a hard positional bargainer? Or should you perhaps follow a strategy somewhere in between? The soft negotiating game emphasizes the importance of building and maintaining a relationship. Within families and among friends, much negotiation takes place in this way. The process tends to be efficient, at least to the extent of producing results quickly. As each party competes with the other in being more generous and more forthcoming, an agreement becomes highly likely. But it may not be a wise one. The results may not be as tragic as in the O. Henry story about an impoverished couple in which the loving wife sells her hair in order to buy a handsome chain for her husband's watch, and the unknowing husband sells his watch in order to buy beautiful combs for his wife's hair. However, any negotiation primarily concerned with the relationship runs the risk of producing a sloppy agreement. Problem: positional bargaining. Which game should you play? Soft participants are friends. The goal is agreement. Make concessions to cultivate the relationship. Be soft on the people and the problem. Trust others. Change your position easily. Make threats. HARD. Participants are adversaries. The goal is victory. Demand concessions as a condition of the relationship. Be hard on the problem and the people. Distrust others. Dig into your position. Make offers. 10. Disclose your bottom line. Accept one-sided losses to reach agreement. Search for the single answer, the one they will accept. Insist on agreement. Try to avoid a contest of will. Yield to pressure. Mislead as to your bottom line. Demand one-sided gains as the price of agreement. Search for the single answer, the one you will accept. Insist on your position. Try to win a contest of will. Apply pressure. More seriously, pursuing a soft and friendly form of positional bargaining makes you vulnerable to someone who plays a hard game of positional bargaining. In positional bargaining, a hard game dominates a soft one. If the hard bargainer insists on concessions and makes threats, while the soft bargainer yields in order to avoid confrontation and insists on agreement, the negotiating game is biased in favor of the hard player. The process will produce an agreement, although it may not be a wise one. It will certainly be more favorable to the hard positional bargainer than to the soft one. If your response to sustained, hard positional bargaining is soft positional bargaining, you will probably lose your shirt. There is an alternative. If you do not like the choice between hard and soft positional bargaining, you can change. The game. The game of negotiation takes place at two levels. At one level, negotiation addresses the substance. At another, it focuses, usually implicitly, on the procedure for dealing with the substance. The first negotiation may concern your salary. the terms of a lease, or a price to be paid. The second negotiation concerns how you will negotiate the substantive question: by soft positional bargaining, by hard positional bargaining, or by some other method. This second negotiation is a game about a game, a meta-ga-me. Each move you make within a negotiation is not only a move that deals with rent, salary, or other substantive questions, it also helps structure the rules of the game you are playing. Your move may serve to keep the negotiations within an ongoing mode, or it may constitute a game-changing move. This second negotiation, by and large, escapes notice because it seems to occur without conscious decision. Only when dealing with someone from another country, particularly someone with a markedly different cultural background, are you likely to see the necessity of establishing some accepted process for the substantive negotiations. But whether consciously or not, you are negotiating procedural rules with every move you make, even if those moves appear exclusively concerned with substance. The answer to the question of whether to use soft positional bargaining or hard is neither. Change the game. At the Harvard Negotiation Project, we have been developing an alternative to positional bargaining, a method of negotiation explicitly designed to produce wise outcomes, efficiently and amicably. This method, called principled negotiation or negotiation on the merits, can be boiled down to 4 basic points. These 4 points define a straightforward method of negotiation that can be used under almost any circumstance. Each point deals with a basic element of negotiation and suggests what you should do about it. People. Separate the people from the problem. Interests. Focus on interests, not positions. Options. Generate a variety of possibilities before deciding what to do. 11 criteria. Insist that the result be based on some objective standard. The first point responds to the fact that human beings are not computers. We are creatures of strong emotions who often have radically different perceptions and have difficulty communicating clearly. Emotions typically become entangled with the objective merits of the problem-taking positions. Just makes this worse because people's egos become identified with their positions. Hence, before working on the substantive problem, the people problem should be disentangled from it and dealt with separately. Figuratively, if not literally, the participants should come to see themselves as working side by side, attacking the problem, not each other. Hence the first proposition: separate the people from the problem. The second point is designed to overcome the drawback of focusing on people's stated positions when the object of a negotiation is to satisfy their underlying interests. A negotiating position often obscures what you really want. Compromising between positions is not likely to produce an agreement which will effectively take care of the human needs that led people to adopt those positions. The second basic element of the method is focus on interests, not positions. The third point responds to the difficulty of designing optimal solutions while under pressure. Trying to decide in the presence of an adversary narrows your vision. Having a lot at stake inhibits creativity. So does searching for the one right solution. You can offset these constraints by setting aside a designated time within which to think up a wide range of possible solutions that advance shared interests and creatively reconcile differing interests. Hence, the third basic point: Before trying to reach agreement, invent options for mutual gain. Where interests are directly opposed, a negotiator may be able to obtain a favorable result simply by being stubborn. That method tends to reward intransigence and produce arbitrary results. However, you can counter such a negotiator by insisting that his single say-so is not enough, and that the agreement must reflect some fair standard independent of the naked will of either side. This does not mean insisting that the terms be based on the standard you select, but only that some fair standard such as market value, expert opinion, custom, or law determine the outcome. By discussing such criteria rather than what the parties are willing or unwilling to do, neither party need give in to the other. Both can defer to a fair solution, hence the fourth basic point. Insist on using objective criteria. The method of principled negotiation is contrasted with hard and soft positional bargaining. In the table below, which shows the 4 basic points of the method in boldface type, the 4 propositions of principled negotiation are relevant from the time you begin to think about negotiating until the time either an agreement is reached or you decide to break off the effort. That period can be divided into 3 stages: analysis, planning, and discussion. During the analysis stage, you are simply trying to diagnose the situation, to gather information, organize it, and think about it. You will want to consider the people problems of partisan perceptions, hostile emotions, and unclear communication, as well as to identify your interests and those of problem. Positional bargaining. Which game should you play? Solution: change the game, negotiate on the merits. Soft, HARD, principled. Participants are friends. Participants are adversaries. Participants are problem solvers. The goal is agreement. The goal is victory. The goal is a wise outcome, reached efficiently and amicably. 12. Make concessions to cultivate the relationship. Demand concessions as a condition of the relationship. Separate the people from the problem. Be soft on the people and the problem. Be hard on the problem and the people. Be soft on the people, hard on the problem. Trust others. Distrust others. Proceed independent of trust. Change your position easily. Dig into your position. Focus on interests, not positions. Make offers. Make threats. Explore interests. Disclose your bottom line. Mislead as to your bottom line. Avoid having a bottom line. Accept one-sided losses to reach agreement. Demand one-sided gains as the price of agreement. Invent options for mutual gain. Search for the single answer, the one they will accept. Search for the single answer, the one you will accept. Develop multiple options to choose from. Decide later. Insist on agreement. Insist on your position. Insist on using objective criteria. Try to avoid a contest of. Will try to win a contest of will. Try to reach a result based on standards independent of will. Yield to pressure. Apply pressure. Reason and be open to reasons. Yield to principle, not pressure. The other side. You will want to note options already on the table and identify any criteria already suggested as a basis for agreement. During the planning stage, you deal with the same 4 elements a second time. Both. Generating ideas and deciding what to do. How do you propose to handle the people problems of your interests, which are most important? And what are some realistic objectives? You will want to generate additional options and additional criteria for deciding among them. Again, during the discussion stage, when the parties communicate back and forth, looking toward agreement, the same four elements are the best subjects to discuss. Differences in perception, feelings of frustration and anger, and difficulties in communication can be acknowledged and addressed. Each side should come to understand the interests of the other. Both can then jointly generate options that are mutually advantageous and seek agreement on objective standards for resolving opposed interests. To sum up, in contrast to positional bargaining, the principled negotiation method of focusing on basic interests, mutually satisfying options, and fair standards typically results in a wise agreement. The method permits you to reach a gradual consensus on a joint decision, efficiently without all the transactional costs of digging in to positions only to have to dig yourself out of them. And separating the people from the problem allows you to deal directly and empathetically with the other negotiator as a human being, thus making possible an amicable agreement. Each of the next 4 chapters expands on one of these 4 basic points. If, at any point, you become skeptical, you may want to skip ahead briefly and browse in the final 3 chapters, which respond to questions commonly raised about the method. 13.2. The method. 2. Separate the people from the problem. 3. Focus on interests, not positions. 4. Invent options for mutual gain. 5. Insist on using objective criteria. 2. Separate the people from the problem. Everyone knows how hard it is to deal with a problem without people misunderstanding each other, getting angry or upset, and taking things personally. A union leader says to his men, "L. Right? Who called the walkout?" Jones steps forward. "I did. It was that bum foreman Campbell again. That was the 5th time in 2 weeks he sent me out of our group as a replacement. He's got it in for me, and I'm tired of it. Why should I get all the dirty work?" Later, the union leader confronts Campbell. "Why do you keep picking on Jones?" he says. "You've put him on replacement detail 5 times in 2 weeks. What's going on?" Campbell replies, "I pick Jones because he's the best. I know I can trust him to keep things from fouling up in a group without its point man. I send him on replacement only when it's a key. Man missing? Otherwise I send Smith or someone else. It's just that with the flu going around. There've been a lot of point men out. I never knew Jones objected. I thought he liked the responsibility." In another real-life situation, an insurance company lawyer says to the state insurance, "Commissioner, I appreciate your time, Commissioner Thompson. What I'd like to talk to you about is some of the problems we've been having with the presumption clause of the strict liability regulations. Basically, we think the way the clause was written causes it to have an unfair impact on those insurers whose existing policies contain rate adjustment limitations, and we would like to consider ways it might be revised." The commissioner, interrupting, "Mr. Montero, your company had ample opportunity to voice any objection it had during the hearings my department held on those regulations before they were issued. I ran those Hearings, Mr. Montero. I listened to every word of testimony, and I wrote the final version of the strict liability provisions personal why. Are you saying I made a mistake? No, but... Are you saying I'm unfair? Certainly not, sir, but I think this provision has had consequences none of us foresaw and... Listen, Montero. I promised the public when I campaigned for this position that I would put an end to killer hairdryers and $10,000 bombs disguised as cars. And these regulations have done that. Your company made a $50 million profit on its strict liability policies last year. What kind of fool do you think you can play me for? Kominung in here talking about unfair regulations and unforeseen consequences? I don't want to hear another word of that. Good day, Mr. Montero. Now what? Does the insurance company lawyer press the commissioner on this point, making him angry and probably not getting anywhere? His company does a lot of business in this state. A good relationship with the commissioner is important. Should he let the matter rest 14 then, even though he is convinced that this regulation really is unfair, that its long-term effects are likely to be against the public interest, and that not even the experts foresaw this problem at the time of the original hearings? What is going on in these cases? Negotiators are people first. A basic fact about negotiation, easy to forget in corporate and international transactions, is that you are dealing not with abstract representatives of the other side, but with human beings. They have emotions, deeply held values, and different backgrounds and viewpoints, and they are unpredictable. So are you. This human aspect of negotiation can be either helpful or disastrous. The process of working out an agreement may produce a psychological commitment to a mutually satisfactory outcome. A working relationship where trust, understanding, respect, and friendship are built up over time can make each new negotiation smoother and more efficient. And people's desire to feel good about themselves and their concern for what others will think of them can often make them more sensitive to another negotiator's interests. On the other hand, people get angry, depressed, fearful, hostile, frustrated, and offended. They have egos that are easily threatened. They see the world from their own personal vantage point, and they frequently confuse their perceptions with reality. Routinely, they fail to interpret what you say in the way you intend and do not mean what you understand them to say. Misunderstanding can reinforce prejudice and lead to reactions that produce counter-reactions in a vicious circle. Rational exploration of possible solutions becomes impossible, and a negotiation fails. The purpose of the game becomes scoring points, confirming negative impressions, and apportioning blame at the expense of the substantive interests of both parties. Failing to deal with others sensitively as human beings prone to human reactions can be disastrous for a negotiation. Whatever else you are doing at any point during a negotiation, from preparation to follow-up, it is worth asking yourself, am I paying enough attention to the people problem? Every negotiator has two kinds of interests, in the substance and in the relationship. Every negotiator wants to reach an agreement that satisfies his substantive interests, that is, why one negotiates. Beyond that, a negotiator also has an interest in his relationship with the other side. An antiques dealer wants both to make a profit on the sale and to turn the customer into a regular one. At a minimum, a negotiator wants to maintain a working relationship good. Enough to produce an acceptable agreement if one is possible given each side's interests. Usually more is at stake. Most negotiations take place in the context of an ongoing relationship where it is important to carry on each negotiation in a way that will help rather than hinder future relations and future negotiations. In fact, with many long-term clients, business partners, family members, fellow professionals, government officials, or foreign nations, the ongoing relationship is far more important than the outcome of any particular negotiation. The relationship tends to become entangled with the problem. A major consequence of the people problem in negotiation is that the parties' relationship tends to become entangled with their discussions of substance. On both the giving and receiving end, we are likely to treat people and problem as one. Within the family, a statement such as, "The kitchen is a mess," or "Our bank account is low," may be intended simply to identify a problem, but it is likely to be heard as a personal attack. Anger over a situation may lead you to express anger towards some human being associated with it in your mind. Egos tend to become involved in substantive posse. Tie-ins. Another reason that substantive issues become entangled with psychological ones is that people draw from comments on substance unfounded inferences which they then treat as facts about that person's intentions and attitudes toward them. 15. Unless we are careful, this process is almost automatic. We are seldom aware that other explanations may be equally valid. Thus, in the union example, Jones figured that Campbell, the foreman, had it in for him, while Campbell thought he was complimenting Jones and doing him a favor by giving him responsible assignments. Positional bargaining puts relationship and substance in conflict. Framing a negotiation as a contest of will over positions aggravates the entangling process. I see your position as a statement of how you would like the negotiation to end. From my point of view, it demonstrates how little you care about our relationship. If I take a firm position that you consider unreasonable, you assume that I also think of it as an extreme position. It is easy to conclude that I do not value our relationship, or you, very highly. Positional bargaining deals with a negotiator's interests, both in substance and in a good relationship, by trading one off against the other. If what counts in the long run for your company is its relationship with the insurance commissioner, then you will probably let this matter drop. Or, if you care more about a favorable solution than being respected or liked by the other side, you can try to trade relationship for substance. If you won't go along with me on this point, then so much for you. This will be the last time we meet. Yet giving in on a substantive point may buy no friendship. It may do nothing more than convince the other side that you can be taken for a ride. Separate the relationship from the substance. Deal directly with the people. Problem: dealing with a substantive problem and maintaining a good working relationship need not be conflicting goals if the parties are committed and psychologically prepared to treat each step Aratelli on its own legitimate merits. Base the relationship on accurate perceptions, clear communication, appropriate emotions, and a forward-looking, purposive outlook. Deal with people problems directly. Don't try to solve them with substantive concessions. To deal with psychological problems, use psychological techniques. Where perceptions are inaccurate, you can look for ways to educate. If emotions run high, you can find ways for each Person involved to let off steam. Where misunderstanding exists, you can work to improve. Communication. To find your way through the jungle of people problems, it is useful to think in terms of 3 basic categories: perception, emotion, and communication. The various people problems all fall into one of these 3 baskets. In negotiating, it is easy to forget that you must deal not only with their people problems, but also with your own. Your anger and frustration may obstruct an agreement beneficial to you. Your perceptions are likely to be one-sided, and you may not be listening or communicating adequately. The techniques which follow apply equally well to your people problems as to those of the other side. Perception. Understanding the other side's thinking is not simply a useful activity that will help you solve your problem. Their thinking is the problem. Whether you are making a deal or settling a dispute, differences are defined by the difference between your thinking and theirs. When 2 people quarrel, they usually quarrel over an object. Both may claim a watch, or over an event. Each may contend that the other was at fault in causing an automobile accident. The same goes for nations. Morocco and Algeria quarrel over a section of the Western Sahara. India and Pakistan quarrel over each other's development of nuclear bombs. In such circumstances, people tend to assume that what they need to know more about is the object or the event. They study the watch, or they measure the skid marks at the scene of the accident. They study the Western Sahara or the detailed history of nuclear weapons development in India and Pakistan. Ultimately, however, conflict lies not in objective reality, but in people's heads. Truth is simply one more argument, perhaps a good one, perhaps not, for dealing with the difference. 16 Ference. The difference itself exists because it exists in their thinking. Fears, even if ill-founded, are real fears and need to be dealt with. Hopes, even if unrealistic, may cause a war. Facts, even, if established, may do nothing to solve the problem. Both parties may agree that one lost the watch and the other found it, but still disagree over who should get it. It may finally be established that the auto accident was caused by the blowout of a tire which had been driven 31,402 miles, but the parties may dispute who should pay for the damage. The detailed history and geography of the Western Sahara, no matter how carefully studied and documented, is not the stuff with which one puts to rest that kind of territorial dispute. No study of who developed what nuclear devices when will put to rest the conflict between India and Pakistan. As useful as looking for objective reality can be, it is ultimately the reality as each side sees it that constitutes the problem in a negotiation and opens the way to a solution. Put yourself in their shoes. How you see the world depends on where you sit. People tend to see what they want to see. Out of a mass of detailed information, they tend to pick out and focus on those facts that confirm their prior perceptions and to disregard or misinterpret those that call their perceptions into question. Each side in a negotiation may see only the merits of its case and only the faults of the other side's. The ability to see the situation as the other side sees it, as difficult as it may be, is one of the most important skills a negotiator can possess. It is not enough to know that they see things differently. If you want to influence them, you also need to understand empathetically the power of their point of view and to feel the emotional force with which they believe in it. It is not enough to study them like beetles under a microscope. You need to know what it feels like to be a beetle. To accomplish this task, you should be prepared to withhold judgment for a while as you try on their views. They may well believe that their views are right as strongly as you believe. Yours are. You may see on the table a glass half full of cool water. Your spouse may see a dirty, half-empty glass about to cause a ring on the mahogany finish. Consider the contrasting perceptions of a tenant and a landlady negotiating the renewal of a lease. Tenant's perceptions. The rent is already too high. With other costs going up, I can't afford to pay more for housing. The apartment needs painting. I know people who pay less for a comparable apartment. Young people like me can't afford to pay high rents. The rent ought to be low because the neighborhood is run down. I am a desirable tenant with no dogs or cats. I always pay the rent whenever she asks for it. She is cold and distant. She never asks me how things are. Landlady's perceptions. The rent has not been increased for a long time. With other costs going up, I need more rental income. He has given that apartment heavy wear and tear.